Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of Sirhan on X, live from Cincinnati, Ohio, in the United States. Hope everyone had themselves a wonderful 9th of May 2025. Lots to get to today. I'll go get right down to it here real quick. A little chilly day out here in Cincinnati, out of nowhere, but temperatures are starting to get better. So everyone out here in Cincinnati, instead of worrying about what the Bengals are doing right now, which I'll touch on here in a bit, excuse me, everybody just get ready to enjoy the weather and just enjoy the gorgeous weather that's coming through in Cincinnati, because there's lots of better things to do than worry about what the Bengals do, because you guys basically have no lives at this moment. But I'll get to you guys here in a minute. Now we'll touch on a few things here real quick. I do apologize for my shortness of breath. Not the greatest, not feeling all that great today, but I'm here, I'm doing it. So I'm going to start with this here real quick. More fallout from the situation with the George Pickens trade from Pittsburgh to Dallas. Turns up that people, I guess, there's still questions of what's going on as to why it is. As I said on a show last night, which, by the way, real quick, shout out to those of you guys over at Wager Wire at the show The Gridiron. I was on it. A good NFL talk with you guys. Look forward to doing it again. I said last night, this is basically a carbon copy of what they've gone through over the years with malcontent wide receivers. I mean, they did it with Antonio Brown once upon a time. And of course, remember, they traded Deontay Johnson after he had a 1,200-yard season with the Steelers. So that's pretty much the crux of what Pittsburgh does and how they do business. As I said on the show last night, the issue I have is, why would you do this after the draft when you should have done this before, even during the draft, to try to get an extra draft pick out of it? Maybe you can draft a wide receiver out of it, but, that's, I guess, how they do business. Of course, it's come out that the Dallas Cowboys was looking for a number 2 receiver opposite CeeDee Lamb, and apparently they talked to Baltimore about Rashad Bateman, which the Ravens just shot it down, smartly so, because Rashad Bateman's the perfect complement to Zay Flowers over there in Baltimore. I guess they were looking for a number 2 receiver to pair opposite a receiver like CeeDee Lamb, so that's why they made the phone call to Dallas, to Pittsburgh, for George Pickens. Now, from the Dallas perspective of this, if George Pickens is not the diva that he is, and he can get out of his own head and concentrate fully on football, he would be the perfect number 2 receiver opposite CeeDee Lamb. Because for the first time in Pickens' career, he's going to have some stability at quarterback, which is something Pittsburgh hasn't had since Ben Roethlisberger retired. And you can say a lot of things about Dak Prescott all you want, but one thing Dak Prescott is a leader in that Dallas locker room, and maybe it might get George Pickens to get on a straight and narrow here. He is talented enough to do something significant in the NFL as a receiver. I mean, he showed flashes of it, but of course, with all the flashes that he showed also signs of the particular misbehavior he had. Remember, this traces back to his college years at Georgia, where Georgia had to do whatever they can to reel him in. So he does have the talent to get the job done as a wide receiver. Maybe hitting the reset button in Dallas might be what the doctor ordered for him, but it's up to him now to take advantage of it, because maybe he wasn't happy in Pittsburgh. Maybe Pittsburgh was just done with him. But from the Pittsburgh point of view, it's probably a smart move to move on. We consider what they've gone through in the past with Antonio Brown and Deontay Johnson. They got a 3rd round and a 6th, I think it's 3rd and a 7th round pick, out of the draft compensation for the 2026 NFL draft, which is probably the best they could probably do. So it was basically Antonio Brown 2.0. It was probably a smart move by Pittsburgh to move on from him. Now they're talking about maybe adding a guy like Alan Lazard, who spent time with the Jets and the Packers. Their wide receiver room still up in the air, because no one knows what's going to happen with Roman Wilson. Remember, he was drafted out of Michigan to be a receiver, practiced throughout the year last season, but never actually played a game, which raises a lot of questions about what's going on over there in Pittsburgh with him. So it's going to be an interesting offseason with the wide receiver room in Pittsburgh. They did get DK Metcalf, remember, but they thought he was going to have a Metcalf and Pickens pairing. But with how George Pickens probably was not happy, Dallas decided to part ways with him. Even a rumor floated around they might be entertaining Brandon Ayuk, if you know the standout receiver from San Francisco. Remember, even Ayuk said he would like to spend a couple years playing for Mike Tomlin in Pittsburgh. So that's something that might be worth looking at. But from this point of view, it was probably the best thing for both George Pickens and the Pittsburgh Steelers to part ways, both of them. And I think it'd be a good thing moving forward. Maybe a case of a short-term hit for the Pittsburgh Steelers because their wide receiver room is not the greatest. But then again, neither is their quarterback room because it was rated across the board as the worst quarterback room across all of the NFL aficionados, or whatever you want to call them. But I think in the long run, I think Pittsburgh will be fine. They'll find a way. I mean, their history says it, and they'll be okay in the end of the day. But this was something they had to move on from. I know Pittsburgh fans also are glad they got away from him because of his malcontent behavior, understandably so. Remember, they went through this with Antonio Brown many years back, and we know the story with Deontay Johnson. And, Johnson wasn't necessarily a saint over there in Pittsburgh either. So we'll see where that one goes, but smart move by Pittsburgh to move on. And a lot of bickering, as I said earlier, going on here in Cincinnati in the midst of all of this gorgeous weather. They'd rather sit on their homes and their couch and start bickering again. And they've done it over the last several days. Let's start with the first one. It was Joe Burrow, I guess, attending the gala or whatever the frick it is they have going on over there, wherever that part of town is. I think it's in New York. I don't remember. Now, I remind you that who also was there, Justin Jefferson of the Minnesota Vikings and Saquon Barkley of the Philadelphia Eagles. I don't hear Eagles or Vikings fans complaining about that. You guys in Cincinnati just have nothing better to do with your lives, I guess. And of course, now today, it comes out that Shamar Stewart, their questionable first round draft pick. I say questionable because he had no business being drafted in the first round. But here we are because it's the Cincinnati Bengals. Saying he doesn't want to sign a rookie contract right now in the middle of rookie minicamp in some of the most bizarre, odd timing I've ever seen, or maybe anybody has ever seen. A deal is going to get done. He's taking the smart route because all these other draft picks are being signed all over the place. I think he's going to eventually get signed. Granted, I said he shouldn't have been drafted first round for the Bengals, but here we are here. They're obsessed over edge rushers. I don't know why, because they have bigger needs, but that's another story for another day. But can everybody in Cincinnati just please shut up? I mean, seriously, you guys need to just flat out shut up. The weather is gorgeous. Go out there and enjoy it. Quit worrying about what the Bengals do because you're too busy living in the basements of your mama's house, sitting on the TV, staring at the couch, and just flipping through your phones, acting like that's the end-all be-all of everything you guys do in your lives. Because there's better things to do and better things to worry about. This thing is going to get taken care of. We're only in rookie minicamp, and everybody's finding everything wrong with everything here in Cincinnati. I mean, even Reds fans are complaining about whatever the last few days. They need to shut up. So you might as well just enjoy, get outside, enjoy the weather. There's better things to do, worry about than Cincinnati and Cincinnati sports, because that time will come when you guys can cry about that later on in the season, or when the season comes about. Today's not the day for it. Go out and enjoy the weather. Enjoy your lives, because complaining about what happens with the Bengals doesn't get you guys anywhere. Because you complain about the whole same thing ever since Mike Brown took ownership in 1991. Nothing has changed other than a gift-wrapped Super Bowl appearance. So don't expect anything to come different. But good luck down the line, because you shouldn't have drafted this guy in the first round. Because I was down there at the Holy Grail when this draft pick was picked. And I remember the reaction of all you guys down there when that pick was announced. Because you guys were so obsessed over Walter Nolan, the Ole Miss defensive tackle who was drafted by Arizona. And I left there soon because I was afraid of all the tears that took place in Cincinnati, because I thought another flood was going to take place because of the tears of the Bengals fans. You guys are just never happy with anything, aren't you? I don't know what the hell to tell you. I'm not a life counselor. You can seek that for yourself. But don't worry. The season's going to come, and you're going to be another year of disappointment, and I'm looking forward to seeing how you guys react. Because remember what I did to you guys last season at the end when you guys missed the playoffs after wanting the Kansas City Chiefs to bail you out when you didn't deserve it. And I'd be looking forward to coming at you guys again, because you guys want a reason to cry. I'd love to be the reason to give it. I love the Bengals more than anything else and anything in the world. It's just 90% of the fan base I can't even tolerate because they complain about the equivalent of spilt milk. I mean, what more can I tell you? As I said all along, this is what when I think of the Bengals, I think of this image. They're more like the Bengals fans, because it happens to them every single time. Anything that comes up on this news waves in the social media world or on the Cincinnati news waves, they find something wrong with it. And here we are with this again. So good luck down the line. I wish you nothing but the best. Because I said all along, I am over here. You guys are over there. And there's a reason for it. Get my light here. So that takes care of that. More on the NFL talk later because I'm going to talk about the upcoming schedule release coming up a week from Wednesday. But speaking of yapping and complaining, Draymond Green last night. Guess the story here was he draws a foul from Naz Reid. Naz Reid throws his arm in the air. Naz Reid flails, I guess, flops and tries to get a flagrant. Turns out it was only a technical. But, of course, Draymond Green goes on a rampage in the locker room with the media of the NBA and basically says, I'm not an angry black man, and I don't know what the agenda is against me, yada, yada, yada. Draymond Green is a standout, solid player. He is. I mean, he's a do-it-all player. I mean, his ability to shoot, shooting's not the greatest. Ability to pass, his ability to rebound. Of course, ability to be a pest is among many other things. But do you know your track history brought this on yourself? That's something you still don't get years later, don't you, Draymond Green? You still don't get it. You don't. Why? It's simply because you did this. You can forget the 2016 Western Conference Finals against Oklahoma City. We went for the rebound and kicked Steven Adams where he can produce babies. I guess he doesn't produce babies anymore as a result. Who can forget, you tried the same thing on LeBron James. Of course, there's a lot of hubbub about it after that particular incident. Who knows? Among many other things, the elbows kicking Domantas Sabonis in the playoff series against Sacramento a year ago or the year before last. I can't remember which. But, the story, he tried to grab the rebound. Draymond Green steps on Domantas Sabonis' chest. But it's basically the agenda is if you bring this upon yourself day in, day out, week in, week out, and when you do that sort of thing, it's going to be magnified more than ever. I mean, you have your own podcast now, Draymond. You should know better than this. Everything's going to be screened. Everything's going to be recorded. Everything's going to be photocropped. Everything's going to be record cropped. Whatever you want to say, go ahead and say it, but it doesn't matter. It's out there. You did this to yourself a long, long, long time ago. I mean, a lot of it, whether it's intentional or not, that's subject to opinion, but you did this to yourself a long time ago with some of the things you do, with some of the things you say. I mean, you apparently after you lost to the Cleveland in the 2016 NBA Finals, you was the one that paged Kevin Durant to come over to Golden State to help you win back-to-back, which he did. It's just a never-ending story with Draymond Green. I mean, I like the hell out of Draymond. He's a heck of a player. But all of his antics over the years, like most of the NBA intelligentsia and the NBA community, is sort of wore thin on others. And as far as what took place in that locker room when he went off on the media members, it's a byproduct of the fact that he did this to himself for the longest time. And finally, I guess he finally unraveled. I mean, didn't this say it's unraveled, but just went off. And he doesn't understand. He has a podcast, and he's the one that nitpicks all of this, but yet exempts himself from it. Maybe the biggest issue is Golden State didn't reel him in a few times before during all of this time when he was kicking players where they can produce babies. So, but it's an ongoing issue. I guess he had the same thing again with Naz Reid. Of course, he's my favorite part was he tried something on Rajon Rondo when Golden State played New Orleans in the playoff series in 2015 when Rondo was with the Pelicans. And Rajon Rondo, who backs down from no one, got in Draymond's face, and that got crazy. But the story here again is Draymond Green. It's a historical thing with you. You've done it for the longest time, for the wildest time. And basically, everyone's starting to see her act a little bit and is sort of wearing thin piece by piece. It's also a byproduct of the fact that, your actions and it's seen on the replays time after time. Everyone's starting to see the act. You're a heck of a player. You don't need to resort to this. I don't know why you feel the need to. But good luck down the line of Golden State because you got ramrodded by Minnesota last night, albeit without Steph Curry. But good luck in the rest of the series because you have Anthony Edwards to deal with, and Anthony Edwards isn't going to back down from you. If Naz Reid isn't, Anthony Edwards certainly isn't. Because Anthony Edwards is one of the rare dying breeds right now where he wants the best at the best. He showed it when he eliminated the Lakers in the first round, and I think he's driven to knock Golden State out good chance that happens, especially if Steph Curry doesn't come back or is not 100%, which is plausible. Now, Golden State did get Jimmy Butler to help out, but maybe a series like this is where they probably wish they should have kept Klay Thompson because without Steph, where's the points going to be coming from now? Good luck. I swear some athletes bring the attention to themselves. And as much as I like Draymond Green as a player, and he's a pretty darn good all-around player, despite the antics, you just wish he cut this antics and cut the theatrics, because when he focuses, he can be a pretty darn good player in the NBA, especially with the system they run in Golden State and how they do things. I mean, he's a key piece of why they won 4 titles. Speaking of people running their mouths, this one is of an extreme measure, and being a part of the boxing community, I've seen a lot of call-outs. I guess I'm going to chime in my 2 cents on this. A video was released not too long ago about the racist Teo Lopez using a racial slur directed at Terrence Crawford in the middle of hitting a heavy bag. Let's start with this. I'm going to trace back to this before I talk about this incident, because I try to divulge away from it. But since it's a hot topic of the boxing community and I'm a part of it, I'll weigh my 2 cents in a second. The slandering he did to Vasily Lomachenko, the way he degraded his character, the way he attacked his character, the way we're talking Teo Lopez here, the way he slandered him and his family and what's going on over in the Ukraine. Everybody knows what the story with that is if you're in politics. And I guess he's called for years for a fight with Terrence Crawford. He and Terrence Crawford were both under the top-ranked banner at one point, and he could have had the fight anytime he wanted. And Terrence Crawford was only one division up of him at the time. I mean, Teo Lopez was at lightweight. Terrence Crawford was at one point the undisputed junior welterweight champion of the world. And if he wanted Terrence Crawford, he could have just gone up to Bob Arum and say, I'll move up to 140 and fight Terrence Crawford, make the fight happen. Terrence Crawford would have welcomed it. And then he goes on some of the range where he's talking about this fighter, that fighter, saying he wants Tank Davis, he wants Bruce Enos, he continued to mention Crawford, Devin Haney, a bunch of some type of racist and even some kind of anti-Semitic rants, which I won't divulge into on my show. Being buddied up with Ryan Garcia, who is also known for racist and anti-Semitic rants. And we come to this conclusion that took place a few days ago. The mask is off. Teo Lopez is basically a degrading waste of human flesh, going back to how he degraded Vasily Lomachenko and his character. This was coming. It was only a matter of time before the mask came off. Once that mask comes off at this type of thing, it's over. It is blatantly over. I don't care what the reason is. He had no business using that word to any fighter, regardless of how you portrayed it. He has no room. I don't care what his background is. I don't care what Terrence Crawford's background is. Once Teo Lopez opened his mouth to use that word toward any fighter, it's over. Ryan Garcia did last year after the fiasco with Devin Haney and all of the failed drug tests, among many other things. And you saw what happened a week ago when he fought Rolly Romero. Teo Lopez is going to get his karma. It's going to come hard, and it's going to come swift, and it's going to be well-deserved. Anyone that pertains to use that word, I don't care what the reason is, once that mask comes off, it's off. Your true colors come out. Everything about you comes out, and the party is over. Good luck down the line. Because I never bought your act. The only reason why you beat Vasily Lomachenko is you fought a one-armed Lomachenko who was on the downturn of his career. You ducked him for 3 years while you went ahead and slandered him. You had a chance to fight Terrence Crawford when you and Crawford were both on the top-ranked banner. I mean, you both were on the top-ranked banner. That's one thing people forget. Terrence Crawford also fought on that banner while Teo Lopez was there. You could have gone to Bob Arum, said we could have had the fight. You wanted to fight Terrence Crawford when Crawford was on the top-ranked banner, which would have been an easy fight to make because Terrence Crawford, Teo Lopez on the top-ranked banner. Crawford would have welcomed it. He would have beat your, what that night. But you resorted to this, and you still resorted to calling out Terrence Crawford. Now you want to splurt out that kind of a word aimed at Terrence Crawford. Now, supposedly they got into some heated, verbal exchange a couple weeks ago prior to Teo's fight with Barbosa on the Romero Garcia undercard, where Crawford called some people the B word. Look, I'm not fond of what Terrence Crawford said to those people, but it's one thing to call someone the B word and then call someone else a racial slur. That is a major difference that people in the boxing community are still blinded to, especially the Teo Lopez fans who supported his act and supported what he said about Terrence Crawford with the use of such a degrading and derogatory word. You guys are every bit the problem Teo Lopez is, and you guys are just the biggest bunch of degrading scumbags in the boxing community right now, and your best bet is to distance yourself from it if you still want to be a Teo Lopez fan, because he's going to get his soon, and so too are his fans. I'm going to be one like a lot of people in the boxing community will be looking forward to seeing that day when that time comes. It happened to Ryan Garcia last week. It happened to Mike Tyson when he did the same thing prior to the fight with Lennox Lewis, June 8, 2002. We know what happened there. And Teo Lopez is going to get his, and it's going to be a beauty to watch. I mean, he said he wants Boots Ennis, who I think Boots Ennis is going to just dust him off effortlessly. I mean, right now, with that word, maybe the best thing that happened to him is all those guys going to want a piece of him. We're going to see if he's man enough to fight those guys. I mean, he tried to get Brian Newman back up. Brian Newman Jr. wanted him. Teo ducked. Boots Ennis, I'm sure now wants him. Devin Haney, I'm pretty sure wants him. I mean, I would say Terrence Crawford does, but he has Canelo Alvarez to deal with. He has bigger fish to fry now because Teo Lopez just shot himself in the foot. People of that race is going to want a piece of him, and they're going to make an example out of him. It's only a matter of time before it happens now. And the Teo Lopez fans better have a real explanation as to why that's not going to be karma his way after the use of such a negative, derogatory, racist slur toward anyone. Good luck. Once that mask is off, it's over. Teo just opened his mask. That mask is officially off. He's done. I hate to use this platform to discuss such a thing because I have friends and cohorts and everything from all races, colors, cultures, whatever you want to call it. But Teo Lopez crossed the line that nobody should ever cross. Once that line is crossed, there's no turning back. The mask is off. Teo done did it, and the party is over for him. I wish him nothing but the best. I'm trying to take the high road with this. Now to some historical events that took place on this day, because there's quite a few of them. Actually, let's start with probably the most exciting one that took place 42 years ago at the Aladdin at Las Vegas. It was two blood and guts warriors, Ray Mancini and Art Frias, for the lightweight championship. Ray Mancini is the blood and guts warrior from Youngstown, Ohio, against Frias, who was living in Montebello, California. Frias won the championship from Claude Noel. It was vacated simply because of boxing politics that screwed Sean O'Grady, who was the champion at the time. He made a couple of successful title defenses going into this fight. Ray Mancini was a year removed from just being decimated by Alexis Arguello, the all-time great little big man. But we have two warriors, the caliber of Frias and Mancini. You're going to get action. Granted, the fight lasted barely 2 minutes, but for that 2 minutes, you got more than your money's worth. Lots of blood, lots of action, lots of punches in both ways, and a terrific fight between two lightweights who basically were just made for TV. This was on CBS Sports Sunday. Tim Ryan and Gil Clancy calling the fight at a time when CBS Boxing was the premier network for free network TV fights in the early 80s. And two guys that were made for TV clashed for a one-round fight. But for that one round, before Hagler Hearns, took over the greatest round of boxing history, this one had a case for it, and man, they went at it. First half of the fight looked like Frias was going to probably win this thing because he had that left hook that stunned Mancini early. But Mancini, of course, as usual, comes back and takes care of his side. Mancini and Frias just going at it till the pressure and the punch volume of Ray Mancini just became too much. And of course, the left hook that floored Frias and sent him down and out for the count. And Mancini wins the lightweight championship of the world. One of those fights that were great for as long as they last, that was Mancini Frias 43 years ago at the Aladdin in Las Vegas today. Ray Mancini, your typical blood and guts warrior, never afraid of anyone, fought the best and always gave an honest effort every time he fought. Made a few successful title defenses. He had one over Ernesto Espana. But of course, after that one, we know the unfortunate circumstance when he fought Duke Koo Kim in Las Vegas a year after he won the title. The 14-round back and forth slugfest to where Duke Koo Kim died of injuries 4 days later. And a lot of things changed in the sport after that point. And a lot of things certainly changed with Ray Mancini because that fight basically haunted him, because everywhere he goes to the streets, everybody asks him, by his own admission, people ask him what it was like to kill a guy, when basically Mancini and Kim at that point were just giving an all-out fight. When you have two all-out fighters like that, the unfortunate circumstances like that happen. I could point to many others. But for Ray Mancini, that was probably his misfortune being remembered for that. But his landmark moment came a year before, on this day, when he fought Arturo Frias to win the lightweight championship. Of course, that fight doesn't happen without that, simply because Kim ascended to a top contender status where Mancini had to defend his title against him. But after that point, you could probably say it wasn't the same again. 2 tough losses to Livingstone Bramble. Took a time out. Lost a tough decision to Hector Camacho in '89. The capper was being knocked out by Greg Haugen. But Ray Mancini is certainly a Hall of Famer, exciting fighter, made for TV, gave his best he could possibly give. Good give and take warrior. You hit him, he's going to look forward to hitting you back. He did just that to Arturo Frias. Frias, a similar fighter like Mancini, blood and guts warrior. He did lose this fight. Got a couple wins later on. Capper for him was a loss to the warrior Bobby Chacon in a great fight where basically Frias could never recover from being knocked out in one round by Ray Mancini, and that's basically what happened at the end of the day. But it was 44 years ago today at the Aladdin in Las Vegas, in front of a decent crowd on CBS Sports Sunday, when network TV was the premier thing in boxing. 2 made-for-TV fighters, Ray Mancini and Arturo Frias, gave a dazzling effort and just had that great fight for as long as it lasts type fight, when in just one round, after just persevering, Ray Mancini won the lightweight championship to reach the pinnacle of his career. So unfortunately, we have to talk about Mancini's fight with Kim more often, given the circumstances that happened afterward, because he was a terrific fighter, gave Alexis Arguello all he could handle before Arguello's skill level just took over. And on this night in the Aladdin, when he won the lightweight championship, just showed how great he was. Certainly a made-for-TV fighter, and whenever Ray Mancini was on TV at that time, you were glued to the television set. And another one that took place, this took place 33 years ago today. This was the 100th edition of HBO's World Championship Boxing, at a time when HBO World Championship Boxing was having some of the all-time historical fights. This was episode 100. Maybe the fight didn't live up to some of the other ones for many, many reasons. Maybe you could say what I'm about to talk about should have never taken place. This was super welterweight champion Terry Norris defending his title against Meldrick Taylor. I say this fight had no business taking place because you know what happened to Meldrick Taylor after the Julio Cesar Chavez fight? And now he's fighting 2 divisions up his best fighting weight against the premier super welterweight who was fighting with Pernell Whitaker and Chavez for that top pound-for-pound distinction. This was a catch weight of 151 pounds. Terry Norris had a weight cut to make that weight. And for the fight followers, I'm sure you saw what happened with Emmanuel Navarrete in terms of weight cutting. But it didn't matter with this. I say this fight had no business taking place because Meldrick Taylor was already shot after the Chavez fight. Prior to this, he had a fight against Glenwood Brown where Brown floored him twice, and some thought Brown won the decision. And he had a feeling that the downturn was really coming from Meldrick Taylor. Whoever's idea was to put him in the ring with the top 3 pound-for-pound fighter and Terry Norris, who was 2 divisions up, naturally bigger, naturally more skilled, and naturally quicker, should have been locked in prison for putting this match together, because this was a gross mismatch the day it was signed. This one should have had no business taking place. I mean, we could have had the Taylor-Chavez rematch at that point, but we know the bad blood between the networks, the bad blood between the promoters, Dan Duva for Meldrick Taylor, Don King for Chavez. That's why it took 4 years to take place. But for this particular fight, it was basically a Terry Norris exhibition, and a fight that maybe in hindsight should have never taken place to begin with. Taylor was in over his head to begin with. Whoever put this fight together were in over their heads to begin with, especially on the Taylor side, simply because he was 2 divisions up his best weight. He didn't even look like that great a welterweight, in my opinion. His biggest luck out was when he won the title from a very green Aaron Davis, who got a lucky punch knockout on Mark Breland. He didn't even look that great when he won the welterweight title. And that basically was it. Basically, you could say this was his end game. I mean, unless they knew it was his end game, they wanted to cash out on Meldrick Taylor. Didn't cash out too much. But it didn't matter. It was a 4-round obliteration, despite having the contractual catch weight and a catch weight Norris barely made, because the day before the weigh-in, he was basically running around with nothing on the weight scales. And Meldrick Taylor, after the Chavez fight, basically this is the end of it for him. Everybody knows what happened with the Chavez fight. Got the beating of his life. The stoppage didn't help his cause. Went up having to go to the hospital for a blood transfusion and an eye injury. But everything just added up to him on this night in a fight that had no business taking place. He had no business messing around with junior middleweights, for one, because the guy was basically a blown-up junior welterweight. He wasn't even all that great at welterweight. Granted, it didn't help the beating that he took from Chavez at St. Patrick's Day in 1990. Didn't help. But when this fight took place and I read about it, I just asked myself, who in the world made this? Because this was a mismatch from day one. And that's what happened 33 years ago at the Mirage in Las Vegas. It was the 100th episode of HBO's World Championship Boxing, when HBO was the premium network for fights at the time. But this was a gross mismatch. It basically was more of a name on Terry Norris's resume at that point, because Meldrick Taylor was basically done. And when Taylor was stopped along the ropes with, I think, like 6 or 7 seconds left in the 4th round, you knew that was the end. He did have another fight with Crisanto Espana a few months later. Was knocked out in 8 rounds. Finally got the Chavez rematch in 1994. But the problem was the Chavez rematch was basically 2.5 years past its expiration date. And Chavez has finished him off for good. But you could probably say this was probably the end of Meldrick Taylor for good on this night, when he fought a fight that had no business taking place when he lost to Terry Norris. Terry Norris, basically, you could probably say this was his best performance, because he never came close to anything like this for the rest of his career. Maybe about a year and a half later, he fought a faded Simon Brown. Brown floored him and knocked him out. Had some fights where he looked good, but he didn't look great, though he did regain a championship. Never ascended to that pound-for-pound level again. Had the wild 3-fight series with Luis Santana, where everything boxing-wise can happen. And the end game for him was in 97, when he just got pounded down by Keith Mullings on a pay-per-view, which cost him several $1 million for a payday against Oscar De La Hoya. But Terry Norris himself was a magnificent fighter in his day. And from the night he beat John Mugabe to win the world title to this particular night against Meldrick Taylor, you could probably say that was his peak years. Granted, he beat a lot of fading all-time great fighters, but still very skilled for a super welterweight, put combinations together. Very, very solid puncher. Knew how to put the punches together. Did it when he stopped what was left of Meldrick Taylor on this night. But he had the tough fight with Troy Waters where bodies were hitting the floor, and that was basically the end game for him. But a standout fighter was Terry Norris. Showed it when he beat Meldrick Taylor. But in hindsight, this fight had no business taking place, because Meldrick Taylor and his people had zero business putting him in the ring against natural, bigger guys like a Terry Norris, who's basically like a middleweight versus a junior welterweight. That's how big of a mismatch this was. The only misfortune for Norris was he couldn't get off any quicker. He was known as a slower starter. But if he really wanted to, he could have ended this earlier than the 4th round, because that's how big of a mismatch this was. But it was a stirring performance for Terry Norris. He deserves all the credit regardless. And another one, this is for my followers out across the Atlantic. I see a few of you guys out here. It was a part of a Showtime pay-per-view triple header that took place at the same arena exactly a year later. The capper was Lennox Lewis retaining his heavyweight championship by just dismantling and destroying Tony Tucker on his way to a unanimous decision win. This was the first fight for Lennox Lewis after Riddick Bowe ducked him by throwing the belt in the garbage can, facing a Tony Tucker who padded his record to get a ranking he had no business getting. The only reason he got the ranking was because of Don King politics. We know how that works. And Lennox Lewis showed why. Because he did something Mike Tyson couldn't do. That was floor Lennox Lewis. Floor Tony Tucker. They did it once. He did it twice. Had the chances to finish him, but couldn't. Basically, Lennox Lewis at times coasted through this fight, but still, when he needed to turn it up, he did. Floor Tucker twice. Finished the rest of the fight on a high note. Got the unanimous decision win in his first real title fight, simply because he was handed the belt because of boxing politics due to Riddick Bowe throwing the belt in the garbage can. But this is probably where the championship pedigree of Lennox Lewis started to begin. The problem with Lennox Lewis, I always said, was the American public never liked him, never bought his act. They were still hooked on fighters like Mike Tyson, Evander Holyfield, and Riddick Bowe, just to name a few of them. But it's a case of Lennox Lewis fighting for respect for the American public, which at the time, you find America, the United States of America, that was where you wanted to be. That was where the dominant public prestige was in the sport of boxing. When he came to the States and wanted to be part of the American public, because it was number one, bar none at the time across the board. Lennox Lewis wanted to do that. The boxing intelligentsia in America didn't like his act, didn't like how he, in their view, conducted himself or carried himself, largely because Lennox Lewis was just simply too foreign for their own good. But he dismantled Tony Tucker, a guy Mike Tyson couldn't knock out, floored him twice, which was something Mike Tyson couldn't do, got the unanimous decision win. And basically, he's still trying to get the fight with Riddick Bowe, where Riddick Bowe just, flat out, not just threw the belt in the garbage can and ducked him, but he ducked him altogether. That had to do with the fact that Lennox Lewis has beat the brakes off of him in that gold medal game in the 1988 Olympics in Seoul, Korea. And Riddick Bowe just simply wanted no parts of him, and we know why. Later, it turns out that his trainer, Eddie Futch, thought what happened to Bowe and Lewis was going to translate to the professionals as it was in the amateurs, because Riddick Bowe, as we know, had a lot of bad habits. But we know now why Riddick Bowe ducked Lennox Lewis. Just point to what took place in the 88 games in Seoul, Korea, when they fought for the gold medal in the super heavyweight division. But Lennox Lewis, his first official world title fight took place 33 years ago today, even though it was handed to him by boxing, politics. Made the most of it, showed his worth as a champion, showed why Riddick Bowe was afraid to fight him when he dismantled Tony Tucker, who was a very good heavyweight, not a great heavyweight, but a very good heavyweight. Lewis floored him twice, which is something Mike Tyson couldn't do. And he had a couple chances to knock him out. Later, Lewis revealed he had a hand injury during the fight. But Lennox Lewis was starting to begin his march to greatness. His time here in America was rather, he had to earn it the hard way. I mean, if you guys in the boxing fraternity know how fighters like Marvin Hagler, Pernell Whitaker, among others, had to earn respect the hard way, especially Larry Holmes, Lennox Lewis was definitely one of them, especially coming from England to the States, where at the time, the market and the money and the fame and everything was here in the United States, especially in the heavyweight division in the 90s, when the division was surreally hot. Lennox Lewis persevered, fought hard for respect, fought the best available they could offer to him at the time, and this was a case of it, and basically made the most of it. I mean, his two losses weren't even in the States. I mean, he lost to Oliver McCall in his own home country, lost to Hasim Rahman in Johannesburg, South Africa, avenged both. And because of his perseverance and his driven dedication to be great, he finally achieved that from this first title fight when he beat Tony Tucker, all the way through the end of the 90s when he decisioned Evander Holyfield in the second of their two fights. He became the heavyweight of the 90s, bar none, not even close, not even up for debate. Some people want to say Evander Holyfield. Newsflash, Lennox Lewis really beat him twice. Forget about the first fight in 1999 when it was a draw. Anybody with a brain knows it was 11-1 in rounds for Lennox Lewis. But Lewis got his revenge 8.5 months later in Vegas, and he capped off the 90s of his era when he beat Holyfield the second time. Respect for Lennox Lewis in this country was so hard to come by and was so hard to get because the American public at the time never bought into similar foreign acts like this, because Lennox Lewis was a different breed with a different approach to the sport. That's something American fight fans and American public weren't accustomed to. They were so fixated on criminals like Mike Tyson. We know the story with that one. And of course, we know how Mike Tyson ducked Lennox Lewis twice in the 90s. But Lennox Lewis just kept persevering and persevering. And that's why he made his mark to the end of the 90s as the heavyweight of the decade. Started on this day 32 years ago when he beat Tony Tucker, did something Mike Tyson couldn't do, and that was floor Tony Tucker twice. Lennox Lewis is an all-time great, whether the boxing intelligentsia likes it or not. Definitely probably the top 5 or top 6. I can live with that. I don't partake in rankings because rankings is, as we know, is something within its own personal opinionated matter. Because a lot of it is more personal than it is of realistic criteria. And I conclude by talking about a couple of other things in the sports. I usually end with boxing, but I want to mix it up a little bit because so people don't think I'm just a one-sport pony, one-trick pony, or whatever you want to call it. Of course, tonight, the 2 games in the NBA playoffs, it's Indiana and Cleveland and Oklahoma City and Denver. I'm interested to see if Cleveland can finally close out a game because they had game 2 wrapped up but couldn't finish it. Going home to an Indiana team that's very confident. You're talking about the two-headed monster, the front line of Pascal Siakam and Miles Turner to play with Tyrese Halliburton. I know Indianapolis is going to be rocking, and I know because they're up 2-0, they're going to be rocking. We're going to find out how good this Cleveland team is. I mean, they amassed the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference, 60-plus wins with Donovan Mitchell, who did everything he could to lead Cleveland to the game 2 win, but the rest of the team didn't show up. Somebody outside of Donovan Mitchell needs to show up tonight for Cleveland to have a chance to win game 3 because that's the only chance they have. I mean, Tyrese Halliburton is just playing out of his mind right now. The trade they had the last offseason deadline for Pascal Siakam put him in the playoff contender position last year and this season and is paying dividends because of how Pascal Siakam fits into what they do over there in Indiana. And of course, Miles Turner, a 3 and B player. He can hit threes out of the center position and generate block shots as a rim protector on the other end for the defense. So somebody other than Cleveland has to step up to help Donovan Mitchell for them to have a chance to win tonight. I think it's going to be a darn good game. Cleveland knows they're up against it. Down 2-0 going to Indiana. They know they cannot afford to go down 3-0. So somebody other than Donovan Mitchell has to show up and step up. Somebody other than Donovan Mitchell has to score at least 30 points for Cleveland to have a shot to win this game tonight. Because otherwise, Indiana might just run them out. The Pacers are playing with extreme confidence right now, going back to how they finished the season and how they demolished Milwaukee. So that should be a pretty darn good one because Cleveland knows they can't afford to go down 0-3 because you know the history in the NBA playoffs. You're down 0-3, you might as well forget it. I mean, no team's ever come back. I know a few have come back from 0-3 to force a game 7, but never from 0-3 to win the series. And Cleveland knows they're up against it tonight. And of course, over there in Oklahoma City, the Thunder and the Nuggets. Thunder knew they let one slip in game 1. So what do? They hang 149 on Denver. Nikola Jokic is just a phenomenal player. But somebody other than him and Jamal Murray needs to step up significantly to keep this series close. They're going to be in Denver, which I think helps some of their role players like an Aaron Gordon and a Michael Porter Jr. So that one I think should be a good one. I think the Thunder's depth eventually is going to take over. I said it was going to be a 7-game series either way. Best player versus the best team. What's it going to take? The superstar player to rise to the occasion like Nikola Jokic has done several times before with basically his impact and his stat stuffing supreme? Or is it going to be the depth of the Oklahoma City Thunder, which may be one of the more deeper teams we've had in the NBA in quite some time? But to show you just how great of a player Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is, and SGA just might win the MVP once the voting comes in. So interesting MVP battle. I think that one's going to come down to the wire. I expect the Nuggets to play much better at home after laying an egg in game 2 when they were just ran out of Oklahoma City. Whether it's good enough for Denver to get a win, I don't know, because the depth of Oklahoma City is something else. For a bunch of young kids like Oklahoma City, there's like nothing phases them. I mean, they lost game 1 on their home court. They just came and got to game 2 and said, okay, we'll just handle business. And they just hung 150 on the Denver Nuggets. I still think it's going to be a good series. I think whoever wins this game tonight may be the one that ekes out the series because being tied 1-1, having to go to Denver and that altitude, I think the Thunder is prepared to do it. I mean, they've had Denver's number of the regular season over the last couple seasons. I know it's the playoffs is a much different atmosphere. You still have the talented Nikola Jokic over there in Denver. I think that one's going to be a good one as that particular series goes on. I said it was a 7-game series. I said the Thunder was going to win that one in 7, and I'm still sticking by it. And I think the Thunder eke this one out tonight. And tomorrow afternoon, it's Boston and New York. And the question I have about this series is, can Boston close out the Knicks? 2 games, you were up 2-0, and you couldn't get the job done. I don't know how the hell to explain this because simply put, you're up 2-0. You have so many unclutch players on that team that couldn't hold off a 20-point lead. And you saw what happened down the stretch with Jason Tatum in game 2. He had the one basket to go up, had a chance to win it, couldn't get the job done. But credit to Mikal Bridges for just being an intangible player for the Knicks and being one of the reasons why they're up 2-0. We know about Jalen Brunson, and we know but Karl Anthony Towns and what they gave up to get Bridges. But it was, I think, Bridges' intangibles that's helped the Knicks go up 2-0. I'll tell you this, the Garden is going to be rocking tomorrow afternoon. That one I think is a coin flip game. But Boston, if you want to win the series, learn how to put a team away. It's inexcusable. You can't put the same team you was up 22 straight games. You can't put them away. Says a lot about how unclutched some of your guys in that roster are because that's the truth. And I conclude with talking about what's coming up next Wednesday. I'll be touching up on this on my show next week because everybody's already talking about it. It's the NFL schedule. Whoop-de-da-da-damn-do. Just because everybody's focused on what's going to take place in September, October, and November, doesn't mean you're going to go crazy over what's the schedule is going to come out, what's going to take place a week from today. Of course, they're going to come out with the NFL Europe games as a part of it. I think one was released. It's going to be Minnesota and Cleveland being one of them. I know Pittsburgh's going to, I believe they're going to Ireland. I can't remember which one of those games out there. I don't know who. Miami's going to be playing in a Europe game. I've never been the fan of the NFL Europe games for this reason. It basically, one of those safety issues where, as I said before, the NFL never gave a darn about player safety, going back to the years of this late Gene Upshaw, who himself never gave a darn about player safety. The travel, we know that it adds up to the players. You think it doesn't? It does. And I can understand if you want to do one game a season, pick one country, do one game a season and leave it, have at it. Another reason I don't like it, now we're having divisional games take place overseas when they should be taking place in one of the two, the home turns of one of the two teams' schedule. I.e., if you're talking about Baltimore and Cincinnati or Baltimore, they shouldn't have a Baltimore-Cincinnati game overseas. That makes no sense. Let's get a shout out. What is up, Howard Gaddis? I see you on here. I hope you're doing good. But for the NFL to continue this route of having international play, expanding it the way it is, especially when it's said countless times they didn't want to do it and they're still doing it, says a lot about what they're in this for. I get it. They want to globalize and market this product globally. But in the era where we have all the technology as we do now, there's other ways to go about it instead of sending players overseas, because the fanfare was still big in the NFL before they started doing NFL Europe. Nobody liked it. Nobody doesn't like it still, and nobody will ever like it. And it's gotten very ridiculous what NFL Europe has gotten into. And everyone's going to say, oh, I want to see them play overseas. I want to see them play overseas. What good does it do you? They're having games like their time is like 1 o'clock their time. We're talking about over here in the States due to time differences, like waking up at 7, 8, 9 in the morning to watch a game overseas. I mean, it's going to get international viewership. I don't know much about the domestic viewership here in the States. I don't partake in the particular numbers because I think they're fabricated 99% of the time. But the NFL Europe, at some point, they need to just do away with it. I get why they want to market the product globally. Now they're talking about playing a game in Australia and, of all places, in United Arab Emirates. What are you guys trying to do with this? I mean, if you guys want to have a Oh, I know they had, well, back they had a NFL Europe, which I think folded at one point, but that's probably the only way you can go. But as far as the actual schedule goes, I'm not going to be one to go crazy over who's playing who on what day because there's so many factors that happen. We talk about some of these big games they're talking about. Of course, all the divisional games, Philadelphia, Washington, when they met in the NFC title game last season, be one. Baltimore and Cincinnati, probably the two best games of the year were when those two went at it, among many others. Green Bay, Minnesota, Detroit, those three facing each other in the NFC North. I don't partake in records or breaking down games in May or June. I know it's exciting for people to see for ticket buying purposes, ticket selling purposes. I get it. But don't go crazy over when a schedule is released, who's going to do what their record's going to be, because there's so many things to consider. It's an exciting time next Wednesday. I'm looking forward to it. I'll talk about it more. But you won't see me go hup over it because a schedule in May doesn't dictate what's going to happen in September, October, November, December, January, or February. Enjoy the schedule release for a day and then go back to your regular scheduled lives. I'll be talking about it next Wednesday when it's released. That's more like next Thursday because it's going to be Wednesday night. They're probably going to leak out games all over the place. There's going to be all kinds of rumor mills talking about what games are going to take place. Don't fall for it until it's officially released. I know they're going to release some of the NFL Europe schedules next week. So let's see where this one goes. I don't understand what the hub is of wanting your team to see your team play overseas when you would rather see them in your own home state. That's the part I'll never understand because NFL Europe is just going overseas is just absolutely, I would say, flatten the product to where quality football isn't what it used to be. I mean, yeah, granted, it's a different league now than it was back then. But we talk about having teams travel across the Atlantic or in some cases, it's going to be across the Pacific for an actual football game. If you don't think that adds up to specific teams, think again. I mean, a couple teams, did manage to win Super Bowls during that run. The last one was Kansas City 2 years ago when they went to Miami. I think it was Germany to beat Miami. But, Kansas City is a different breed. I mean, the NFL Europe thing, I get it. You want to market the product, but maybe you want to take some different alternatives because I know most of the players don't like it. I'll be talking about more of this soon because I've never ever been a fan of the NFL Europe. I was on a show last month talking about this. It's crazy how the NFL was basically more of a domestic sport here in the States. And I know they want to try and globalize. There's ways you can globalize it. You can market it through these days technology as enhanced as it is, and you're still going to get viewership globally. But you're talking about massive 5-6 hour. It's one thing we go from East Coast to West Coast in the States when it's a 3-hour difference from the Pacific to the Atlantic. Of course, sandwich the mountain and Midwest times in between. To go from a state to about a 5-6-7 hour difference across the pond and having games televised at 7-8 in the morning. I don't know how the ratings work because I'm not big on the numbers, but it's a bit of an eyebrow raiser simply because I don't know where that gets you. I mean, we're talking about it from a monetary standpoint. If it helps, okay. You're talking about growth in the product, growth in the fanfare. I get it, but there's other ways you can go about it because people watch the NFL. People watching the Super Bowl worldwide back in the 80s and 90s. I mean, it was televised all over the place. I mean, isn't that globalizing the product enough? You don't need to go crazy over putting games in parts of the globe, especially when the players don't want it, and especially when people are complaining about player safety these days. And now, of course, they're talking about an 18-game season coming up. And now you're going to have this. I've always said, if you're going to have this sort of thing, you better have the games in Europe and give them a bye week by default. Because now I notice when teams travel abroad, they can play the next week back in here in the States. That's not player safety. But as I said, wake me up when the NFL actually gives a darn about what the players feel and what the players want and about player safety, because the NFL certainly doesn't. They give a great product, they market it well, but they don't do it the way you think they should. Oh, I'm glad I'm back in the NFL community all of a sudden. Now I get a chance to voice my opinion a little bit. I'll be talking about this more when the schedule comes out and when it comes closer, because I've been on shows a lot of times talking about this traveling thing. The NFL, I'll say this. When they see the numbers, that's all they think about. Anybody with a brain knows this. You can. I'm not going to go as far as saying fix or rig because I think that's ignorant, especially from the fans in Cincinnati and Buffalo who use that word too much. But we know from a business standpoint, that's what the NFL cares about. And they care about what the green that puts in the pockets of the owners and the pockets of the TV media people, or how you want to call it, the media, whatever. When something happens to marquee players, because I think I trace back to a game, Jacksonville, Buffalo, stand-up defensive end Matt Milano destroyed his elbow on the turf overseas. They don't even give a darn about player safety because if they really did, you would think they would take different measures to do this. It seems like the NFL is basically taking a your way or the highway approach. And the problem is the NFL Players Association, who's supposed to be representing these guys, they don't give a darn either. They're just bending the knee to Roger Goodell's demands. It's getting crazy. I like the NFL myself. I don't like I used to when it was the premier sport in all of the 90s. But when you get out of sending teams overseas as often as you do, I mean, if you're trying to gain, if you think you're trying to gain a monetary gain out of it, maybe. But there's other ways you can go about it. The NFL, strictly business. We get it. They have a good game. Their product is fine. They generate the ratings, especially in the States, when certain teams play, certain superstar players play. But I'm waiting for the day, if this happens, what happens with some of the superstars that generate the revenue and generate the ratings, have something significant happen. God forbid that never happens. But from the NFL point of view, I want to see how they try to recoup from that. Because if we're going to do this, the NFL Europe, and we have people going crazy over NFL Europe, I don't know, which I understand it. What are you going to gain out of this? I mean, you went from a 16-game to a 17-game season when nobody wanted it. Now you're talking about going from a 17-game to an 18-game season, which my understanding is going to be closer within the next 2 to 3 years. Nobody wants it. You have all this NFL Europe stuff. Nobody wants it. I'm talking about from the Players and Players Association view. But when you say you don't want it, but you don't do anything about it, what does it say about you at the end of the day? I said Troy Vincent and those guys, actually going back to when Gene Upshaw was the president of the NFL Players Association, never really gave a darn about players and player safety. I mean, you can file the grievances they want. Nothing is done. Why? Because they're doing it more out of due diligence, meaning because they have to, not because they want to. It's a fun product. Always fun to talk about because we have NFL offseason stuff 24/7, 365 from the start of the season to the end of the season to the offseason to the draft to the training camps. But maybe we need to start understanding the NFL point of view because the NFL point of view only cares about the NFL point of view. I love the product, so let's hope for the best. And that will wrap up this edition of Sirhan on X. I will be back after the weekend. I hope everyone has themselves a wonderful rest of the 9th of May of 2025. As always, make self-care your number one priority. Always take care of yourself first before you take care of anything else. If you take care of yourself first, good things will follow. If you don't take care of yourself first, nothing else matters. Have a good night. Take care, and God bless.